The alternative foods market is expected to grow to $17.9 billion by 2025. In the following panel, we will discuss how consumers are adapting to these new products, hear the VC panelists' vision for the future of the alternative food industry, and what they're seeking for upcoming investments.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Growing IL and Startup Nation Central, for arranging and producing such a great summit. I hope all of you had a chance to interact, explore, and experience the innovation in agri-food tech being promoted here in Israel. We have the most interesting topic of all, investments in alternative foods. Oh, and we have the best panelists, which are going to introduce themselves in a minute. My name is Amir Zaidman, and I'm head of business development at the Kitchen Food Tech Hub. The Kitchen is a seed investor and a technological incubator. We are the leading food tech seed investor in Israel with a portfolio of 19 companies. One of our strongest area of focus is alternative foods, with top-tier companies such as Aleph Farms, Zero Egg, and others. As an incubator, in addition to seed funding, we provide our companies with hands-on support in all aspects pertaining to the development of an early-stage startup, including technology, business development, HR, and more. We also have a global network of partners that are collaborating with our portfolio companies and include some of the largest food and food-related companies in the world, like PepsiCo, Mondelez, Danone, Givaudan, and Mitsui in Japan and Australia. And this, so much about the Kitchen. And now, without further ado, I would like to start our discussion. Our first topic, of course, is introduction. And I would like to start with each one of our panelists introducing themselves. Regina, why don't we start with you?
Yes, a pleasure. Thank you, Amir. First of all, thanks for your invitation. It's really a pleasure to be on the panel. My name is Regina Hecker. I'm partner at Blue Horizon Ventures. We are a venture fund based in Zurich, in Switzerland, and fully dedicated to taking really the animal out of the food chain and thereby improving not only human but also planetary health. So we have the focus on plant-based and cultured food innovation, and we also invest in sustainability topics around food. So you can think of it as being food waste reduction or innovation in alternative packaging.
That's fantastic. Can you share a couple of more words about the group, about the Blue Horizon Group, and the other activities that you have other than venture?
Yeah, of course. So I of course, come from the venture side. So that's my stronghold as a group. It has been really set up since quite a long time already. So the corporation is very active and has done from the beginning seed investments at an early stage, and from that activity also the initiative was set up to really look into finding and building more innovation around alternatives, especially in the chicken space and meat alternatives in general. And that has led now to really the great activity and venture around Live Kindly, which is also a portfolio company of Blue Horizon Venture. And we are extremely excited to see the momentum around that.
Thank you very much, Regina. Dan from California, would you like to introduce yourself, New Crop and the Unovis partners?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Amir. Thanks to the Kitchen and to Startup Nation. My name is Dan Altschuler, and I'm a managing partner at Unovis. We're a global asset management firm focused exclusively on finding alternatives to animal proteins within the global food supply. Our team has been doing this for over 15 years. Our first fund, New Crop Capital, has made over 40 early stage investments in companies around the world, Europe, the United States, China, India, New Zealand, Mexico. And we invest in early stage companies developing what we call replacements to center of plate. So that's replacements to beef, poultry, pork, lamb, fish, shellfish, dairy, and eggs, using proteins that may come from plants, from fermentation, or from cultivated sources. Very happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Dan. Really exciting. Brian, you're the last panelist to be introduced. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Brian Loeb. I help lead the CGC Ventures team at Continental Grain, based out of New York. Continental Grain is a 200-year-old business in grain trading and actually animal protein. And then 20 years ago, we sold the grain trading business to Cargill. We've become a hybrid operator and investor, investing over $2 billion over the past 15 years into the food and ag value chain. When it comes to venture investing, we're a little different than my colleagues here. Alternative protein is a key focus area for us as our functional ingredients. We also have half of our portfolio in the ag side of things. So I think 5 investments of our 16 are in alternative protein. We tend to focus a little bit later stage when we feel like technology is well validated and we can help with commercialization. Definitely seek to be an active and value-add shareholder and leverage CGC's network, partner with Regina and Dan and others to help accelerate commercialization. So.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for the introductions. I would like to jump right in with maybe a little provocative question, and this has to do with plant-based dairy and meat. So we see a huge influx in the amount of brands and amount of companies that are going into the market with alternative dairy and meat products. And my question is divided into 2. First, can we expect to see the same growth in these areas over the next 5 to 7 years? And the second one is, given this large number of new companies and brands, is there room for new innovation? What is still missing from the market? Who wants to jump in? Dan, would you start?
Happy to start. Sure, happy to start. For the first question, we're very bullish on continued growth in the category at a global stage. And the reason is the following. First, the demand is there, and that demand continues to expand as consumers, not just consumers who are looking for vegan or vegetarian options, but just everyday consumers are trying these products and liking them for themselves. So they just taste great. And the price points are coming down where they're on parity or close to parity to animal protein analogs. So that's one reason. Secondly, if you take a step back, the amount of alternative proteins as it relates to the amount of food consumed is still very small. And these companies are just starting to expand and starting to get broader and broader distribution and starting to build up their manufacturing capacity. So be it some of our portfolio companies like Alpha Foods that has national distribution all across the United States and is starting to expand into other territories, or another portfolio company of ours, which is Israeli and recently announced that they were launching into the US called Zero Egg. We expect these companies to continue to grow for the foreseeable future and take a bigger and bigger slice of the overall stomach of consumers around the world.
What about new startups that want to go in? Is there still room for innovation? Would you advise entrepreneurs to innovate in this area of plant-based dairy and meat product? Maybe Brian.
Sure. So I think there is definitely still opportunity for new startups. Dan touched on it, but price, nutrition, and flavor are kind of the 3 pillars that are essential. I think we're doing really well on flavor. I think we're doing quite well in nutrition, although there's room there for higher quality plant-based proteins and just higher quality products all in all. Price is the big one that we keep an eye on, and scale, continued double-digit market growth, which I believe in, is going to help reduce prices, but innovation needs to play a role too. And that's everything from novel proteins to bespoke equipment that can actually make processing better and more effective. So a wide variety of opportunities for innovation. Definitely still encouraging entrepreneurs to work in the space.
Regina, anything different that you see from your point of view in Europe?
Fully agree. I think, the growth it's really just starting, right? I mean, we see already the tremendous uptake in the US, and the US is a leading market in terms of geographies. There's already, from that macro perspective, a lot that has to happen and will happen. And then if you look at how much replacement actually happened, right? It's around 14 to 20%, depending on the region, etc. On the dairy side, on the milk side, we are only at 1% when it comes to meat replacement. And, if you just think about comparing or making that kind of replacement ratio equal to what we see and what already has happened in milk, then just speaking about the meat segment, there's a massive opportunity for growth. And we see a lot of innovation. And I also agree with Brian that I think on the production side, a lot of innovation can and really has to happen if we think about really carbon neutral ways of producing, really being smart about what kind of protein are we sourcing. Can we use upcycling as a way to not only reduce food waste, but also be more efficient, and then again, also more cost efficient. So there's a lot of innovation tying different fields together where we are quite happy to see that being realized in the venture space.
Fantastic.
I just add that it's great. It's great to see companies such as Continental Grain at the table now. When our team started doing this, it was very small checks. So having such large players that can really take a company that has found a niche, has found some consumers, and can give it the cash and the expertise to really go big, that's when you know that this vertical, this category is here to stay. So thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. I share that
Thank
view.
you for helping spark a lot of opportunity.
As seed investors, we all feel the same. Okay, good. I think those were a very good point that you raised about innovation in plant-based dairy and meat. But we want to move on to plant-based, fish and seafood and eggs. Do you feel that those two areas, which are still nascent compared to the other two, to the dairy and meat, do you feel that they have the same potential? Regina, why don't you start?
Yes, with pleasure. I love the question. I think especially seafood is a topic that is extremely high in demand. I mean, if we look at what is produced right now, I think we are more or less at 160 million tons of seafood, both more or less equally via, wild catchery and also aquaculture. And both systems are massively stressed out. So we really have to look into, okay, how can we bridge that demand gap? We had 200 million tons predicted for 2050. We know that more than 170 countries will not be able to satisfy this demand. So you really have to think about how can we actually be smart about satisfying this demand without taxing our oceans more. And I think seafood, especially there, algae is such a great protein source. You just go down basically the food chain and you have an organism that provides a very functional protein, which is complete, which also has the taste characteristics. Brian mentioned flavors being one of the main drivers that you can nicely innovate to really come up with a plant-based alternative that is tasty, sustainable, and actually meets a massive pain point in the industry. So that's something where I see a lot of potential, and I think it's after the plant-based meat focus, something that is coming up on the innovation side and then on the venture side quite a lot, which I'm very happy to see. And on the egg replacement, it's I think also a market, that is now being explored more and more. We have multiple ventures, and Dan mentioned one, Zero Egg. I think it's great to see that this has been picked up really by not only retail, but really also the food service side. And it just underlines that we are at the beginning of innovation and at the beginning of replacing animal-based products with high-quality plant-based alternatives.
Thank you. Dan, Brian, anything to add about the potential of plant-based egg or seafood?
Yeah, I would quickly, Dan, if you don't mind, just that I think what Regina hit on is really important, which is the supply chain side of it and clearly the demand side of it. I think both of these categories have great potential. But the way the question was asked in terms of the same potential, I think that becomes quite nuanced. And it's because amongst dairy, meat, seafood, and eggs, all of them have different demand drivers. They all have different health profiles, sustainability profiles, as Regina touched on, supply chain profiles, all different price points. I love the example of alternative dairy and alternative milks at 13%. But it's really complicated to tease out how much of that is lactose intolerance and how much of that is kind of growing the dairy category beyond. I think for red meat, an exciting kind of shadow market is actually the no cholesterol market, where how many consumers, maybe in their 50s or 60s went from eating 50 burgers a year to only 5 because they were trying to reduce cholesterol in their diet, and can you capture some of that share? So that might be a little bit like the lactose story, but there's just a ton of nuance. So I guess my feeling is great potential for seafood and for eggs, but I'm probably a little less excited in the grand scheme of things. Now, that does not mean that we're not looking at opportunities and we're not supportive of entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Look, another thing to take into account is that eggs might not be a center of plate, but it is ubiquitous in all cuisines for different preparations. That's where functionality comes in. If you're a baker, if you're making pasta, if you're using it as a binder, there are many products in the market that have been in the market for the past 5-10 years that are vegetarian and are not vegan because they weren't able to find something that would bind the product together and give it the functionality at the price point that consumers wanted. So I think that's an argument why eggs will continue to grow differently than meat, because Brian's points are great. In terms of seafood, there's certain realities that need to be addressed. One, there's very little fish in the sea. That's a reality. So if you are a 200 or 300 unit sushi chain, you need to start thinking ahead, because what are you going to be serving your consumers eventually, because the prices continue to skyrocket. Another reality, our oceans are contaminated. And consumers who have been learning more about seafood in the past 10 to 15 years, thinking that it is a healthier protein, well, the reality is that the waters are not that healthy. If it's plastic, if it's mercury. So that is another reason why. And the amount of protein that we consume from the oceans is huge. And at the same time, from an innovation point of view, we 200 plus creatures from the sea, less than 30 land animals. So again, different opportunities for innovation. Last point I'd bring, algae continues to be a great promise, but we have yet to see that transformed into great products at a global level. There's a lot of capacity installed, algae that can be produced in facilities that were going to be used for biofuels that never happened, or from the ocean. So very excited about that. And that's still something where we continue to explore to find the next new thing.
Thank you. That's all of them was a great point, and it's exciting to see different point of views coming from different investors in that space. This is really eye-opening to see the different views about the different potential markets of the plant-based alternatives. I'm going to skip over the issue of cell-based meat because we're running out of time, and this issue has been discussed in many other occasions and by many others. And I want to go and talk about the recombinant proteins that we are seeing getting closer to the market. So products being based on recombinant proteins, such in the dairy and egg markets, which we see getting closer to the market. Do you think those are going to present a real competition to plant-based in terms of winning the consumers? Do you see any challenges and difficulties for products based on recombinant proteins in those areas getting market traction? Dan, why don't you start?
I think the promise is huge. I think their challenge is an engineering one. Are they able to build up the facilities and get the processes in place to manufacture at the price points that consumers can pay? Certainly a lot of innovation that's going into this. We are hopeful, but still I think the word is out at the high level.
Okay, any other point of views? Brian?
Yeah, I've been a part of the Perfect Day story for, I guess, 3 or 4 years at this point, and definitely agree with what Dan said in terms of price being essential. That's kind of our first criteria in this space. They and others are getting closer and closer, have made a tremendous progress over the past few years in reaching those prices. As a technology, what we really like about it is, whey protein within dairy, casein as well. They're the gold standard, and they're really hard to replace with the same sort of functionality and quality and nutrition, a bit like Dan's comment on eggs. And so that's where we see a unique opportunity to create them with a different supply chain, a more sustainable supply chain. But price is essential. And as we think about other areas of innovation, we are soon going to invest in Uko, an Israeli company, making safe gluten and producing it via corn and wheat. And one point I'd like to point out is, fermentation is really compelling, but it can be very expensive to do it at massive scales. Definitely interesting innovation opportunities at Uko and a number of other startups putting novel proteins or novel ingredients into plants because it's a cheaper supply chain to scale.
Thank you very much for this. I'm going to go and touch on something that you've mentioned before, Regina. Microalgae, fungi, yeast, and other microorganisms. We hear a lot about single-cell proteins. Is there a real opportunity here? And why do you think this source of single-cell protein is not as hyped as other sources like plant-based and recombinant proteins?
Yeah, excellent question. I think, there are two angles to it, really. On the one side, fungi and also yeast is already massively used as a production host. So we have those microorganisms already in place to produce also special proteins that have desired functionality. So that's, I think, one element to that question. In terms of usage, I mean, corn, right, is a very good example, kind of leading the curve back 10 years ago already, where they really used mycelium to produce an alternative protein, which I think is just something that is not so well known, but has been in the market and adopted by the consumers already quite nicely. The functionality of the protein as such, I think, is very valuable, again, offered especially by fungi and microalgae. I would say that for algae, and Dan pointed out that fact that it's really about unlocking the potential. Of course, with algae, what you have is a protein that has a very strong taste. I don't know if you ever tasted algae. I mean, we know that from nori, when we eat sushi, the taste is very strong. So you really have to have the appropriate food technology behind it to develop the protein in such a way that you can easily have it as a drop-in solution for whatever you want to create, be that plant-based milk or algae-based, not plant-based, algae-based milk or algae-based meat, etc. Only for fish, you don't have to tailor it as the taste is already the desired one. We have invested, for example, in a company in Paris called Algama, so they have really the food tech in place to unlock basically algae in such a way that the taste is not overpowering, and also that you don't have the strong green color, which is not the desired color in a lot of different products. So I think there it really is the next level of innovation to unlock the quality of those different sources that we have.
Thank you. Any quick comments, Brian or Dan, because we want to move on? Something to add to this quickly? I wanted to ask you, and I would like you to be brief, consider you have an elevator pitch. What would you like to hear from an entrepreneur coming to you? What kind of startup would you invest in? And like the entrepreneurs, you have 30 seconds to describe what is your dream startup in alternative proteins that you're looking for right now. Dan.
My dream pitch is someone who says, you have a delicious plate on your way. We're in COVID time, so they can't present in person. And these are the instructions to present it. It is a seafood product. It is using algae. and we have some very special proprietary IP in terms of the transformation, and it can be mass produced using existing infrastructure. That's the dream.
Fantastic. So algae-based seafood, extremely tasty and scalable. Brian.
Exactly.
I get to take a little bit of a shortcut because due to stage, we oftentimes will be hearing from Dan or Regina or others in terms of here's a startup who's been extremely successful over the past few years at executing on what they said they would do. Certainly for us, again, it comes down to not just innovation, but innovation at affordable prices, excellent taste, excellent sustainability. So an algae-based seafood sounds good to me, but a year or two of execution sounds very good as well.
I understand. Fantastic. So add a fantastic team and execution to what Dan said. Regina, really quickly.
Yeah, I would be excited about every team that provides me with something that I haven't heard of yet, and it should be within the frame of, extremely improved sustainability, ideally carbon neutral or negative production way, and of course the product has to convince. So that comes again back to the equation of price, availability, scaling, but also of course taste, which is the one guiding element.
So very important sustainability, and also like Steve Jobs said, you don't know what you want, or people don't know what they want until you show it to them. So you don't know yet, but you're expecting the entrepreneurs to show this to you. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, again, we're running out of time. I'm sorry for repeating myself. So if you have one sentence of advice for Israeli entrepreneurs, we are typically known for being good on technology, but far from the market. So what do you think an Israeli entrepreneur should bring to the table? Regina.
Yeah, we have been seeing exciting technology in Israel, and we were very happy to invest into TIPA. So compostable packaging is very close to our heart. What I think is really fantastic is the collaboration also with larger corporates in that space to show we have the endorsement for the technology and see, coming back, I think to Dan's point, see that scaling is possible and actually something that happens near term. So that's always extremely valuable.
Fantastic. Brian?
I think Regina emphasized collaboration in a really important way. As an Israeli startup, you want to think about protection, but the sooner that you can get partners involved, whether it's an ingredient selling to brands or a scaling technology working with brands big and small, the sooner you can collaborate, the better.
Fantastic. Dan, you get the last word, so you decide.
I'll be a little contrarian, and I'll say that the best technology isn't necessarily the one that wins in the market. It's the one that connects with consumers, and that connection includes the product and the price and the overall experience. So understanding consumers, understanding that selling to consumers, that investing in the brand is just as important as investing in R&D and manufacturing as well.
Fantastic. So this concludes our panel. We're running out of time. I would like to thank all of you very much for joining us, taking the time and joining this panel and the entire summit. Hope very much to see all of you in person real soon. Stay safe, and again, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.